For me personally, alcohol's never been a huge issue, but as of recently, I decided to cut back for certain reasons, and then I kind of noticed that there were other reasons that would be beneficial for me to cut back. And I think that's the case with a lot of habits, where like maybe you have a few reasons you want to cut back on something, and then once you do, or maybe you stop altogether for a few weeks, and you start to notice like, there's several more benefits you'd never even considered, and now you're cashing in on those benefits and it feels great. And so, that provides some sort of motivation to like keep, maintain your abstinence from whatever that habit or behavior is. So for me, in the case of drinking, I recently decided, I need to stop, at least for a little bit, and the reason for me was I wanted to lose weight. And, drinking for me it's not a huge part of my life, but I was drinking every single Tuesday night. I'd go to the bowling alley with some buddies and we would have, 3 or 4 Vegas bombs, and they're about 300 calories each. So if I were having 4 in a night, it's 1,200 calories. And if I'm going to be cutting out, and I was at the time having 800 calories per day, I had a huge deficit. And if I'm going to be cutting out, 1,200 calories from my diet already, then I may as well just cut out the 1,200 calories that I was spending, or not spending, but that I was consuming every week that I was going bowling. So I wanted to cut back until I reached my target weight of 175 pounds. And over the course of about 4 weeks, I was able to get down to that weight. I dropped off from 200 pounds down to about 170 in a matter of like 3 or 4 weeks. And so in that time, I was going to the bowling alley with my buddies, and they'd be drinking and I wasn't, and that was totally cool. In fact, I noticed that it ended up being a lot more fun, to be honest. Being more present and being able to have but being able to have conversations with people that I otherwise wouldn't be having. I feel like when it comes to alcohol, and it's the same thing with Coca-Cola, but I think that, when you're experiencing the effects of those substances, you have conversations and you have, not like motivation, but it's like a certain hopefulness, I suppose, in the way that you speak, in the way that you conduct yourself. And so you might have like, a night where you get, super drunk and you have these just grand plans with your buddies and, like with your significant other, and with people that you know closely, and everything is amazing. And, like the future is going to be the best, and all these things that we're talking about tonight, they're all going to happen. And there's just this extreme hopefulness. And then when that wears off, you just don't feel that way anymore. And it's like, for me, that always left me with like an empty kind of feeling where it's like, man, like that was a great night, but was it really? Like, was it just all fake? And not fake that it was like not fake in the sense that it was like intended to be fake, but it was like all that motivation and inspiration and hopefulness that me and my friends felt, and the things that we discussed because of that never panned out, and were never going to pan out really, because they were just these grand illusions. And that happens, I feel like, with everybody. So it's not like I'm saying that my friends had any part in that whatsoever, because I did too. But that's just something that I've felt personally when it comes to drinking, and I've never liked that. But taking a step back and not drinking, and then interacting with my buddies and being at the bowling alley and talking to all the people there that like I know and want to catch up with, and having really genuine conversations with them, that weren't like alcohol fueled rants or blurbs. It was like that, to me, was so much more meaningful, and it just became a lot more fun to go bowling, even though previously a lot of the fun had come from getting a buzz on and then bowling and not really giving a shit. So for me, it started with the calories, and then it kind of shifted into like, well, like I don't really like myself in a social setting being buzzed. It's just not how I wanted to present myself personally, and it wasn't something I needed to do. So it was like, well, why am I continuing to do this if I don't need it to have fun in a social setting? And that brought up another thought where it's like, well, in general, if you feel like you need to have alcohol in a social setting to enjoy yourself, then you're removing the ability from yourself to learn how to interact in a social way that's beneficial for you and everybody else. And you're using alcohol as a crutch, and although it's a very effective crutch, like if you never learn the skills required to be able to interact socially, in situations that might be uncomfortable, you're never going to learn those skills ever. And you might be drunk every time, but you can't be drunk every time. It's like, people always like kids these days always going on their phones in social settings and never interacting. And it's honestly the same thing. If you remove that uncomfortability from yourself, then there's no motivation to overcome that uncomfortability. And so when it comes to drinking, it's like if you can't have a good time without drinking, especially in a social setting, then you're really robbing yourself of the opportunity to grow as a person. And so, like I said, if something is not fun unless you're drunk, then you may also want to reassess, like, either, hey, like, am I the problem here? Or is the situation the problem here? If I have to be somewhere, if I have to be drunk somewhere, then, like, is that a place that I want to be spending my time? And I'll give you a hint. The answer is no. At least most of the time. Sometimes you can't avoid it, of course. But, like, a lot of the time, you don't want to be somewhere unless, if you have to be drunk to be there. Why is that a place where you feel like, your time is valuable? These are some of the questions I started to ask myself. And, it's not a problem for me now, but it's something I want to touch on in this video. But back in high school, like, I loved drinking. And, like, I wouldn't ever drink if I was, like, by myself. Like, it's not what I mean, like, that. But I loved the potential to establish yourself in a certain social situation by drinking. And what I mean by that is, personally, I took great pride in the fact that I could chug a bottle for 15 or 20 seconds. And so I would, a lot of times at, like, parties in high school, I would, like, love to be that guy who had a bottle of vodka, and I'd finish the bottle if it was, like, 2/3 or, like, half of the way full. And everyone would be cheering and bullshit, and I'd just be like, I'd be loving being that guy. And then it would end up becoming an awful night very shortly thereafter. But, like, that was something that I really, really enjoyed doing, I shotgunned a Four Loko once at a party, and, like, everyone was chanting and all this crap, and I took off my, I was a nurse, it was for a Halloween costume, and I took off my nurse's shirt, and I had, like, a Batman costume, and it was, like, that kind of thing I really loved, because it felt to me like if I were able to be that guy, then it takes off all the pressure for the night thereafter to establish yourself socially in that setting. And so, the potential to bring about that bravado and that reputation in a very, very short period of time. All it takes is 15 seconds of chugging a bottle or whatever. Being able to be that guy with really no effort, for me was huge, because I was very socially awkward. I couldn't make conversation. I couldn't be part of a social setting unless I was doing something. And so that was an easy way for me to feed off of the energy of everybody else in a way that I didn't have to talk. And then, of course, once I would get fucking wasted after I did that, then it would be very easy, and there'd be zero pressure to talk or do anything, because I'm wasted and I'm just having a good old drunk time. But that's not what I want out of social interactions, and I realized that very early on. So for like 2 years after high school, like honestly like 3 years after high school, I really never drank at all. I only got drunk like maybe one time in those 3 years. I never even like really had drinks. Otherwise, I'd have like a beer if the situation really called for it, like if I was at a brewery with like my girlfriend and her dad or something, I'd have a beer. But for the most part, I just didn't drink at all. I didn't enjoy it. I don't like the taste of alcohol like at all in any capacity. I don't really like beer. I like some very specific beers, I suppose, but like I don't like alcohol, and if I was going to do it, I would just have to have I'd have a shot of tequila, and that would, because I know what it's going to taste like every time. It's not going to it doesn't get worse and worse. It's always the same. It's bad, and so I'd have a shot of tequila with lime. That's that'd be my go-to if I had to pick. But I would do that very, very infrequently until I started going bowling, as I'd mentioned. And then, for the last year and a half, it was like every single week I was having 3 or 4 Vegas bombs and some beer and whatever. I would be responsible. I wouldn't be drinking and driving, and I would be at the bowling alley for several hours. So it wasn't like I was going to be getting wasted and then driving home. But I would be getting a buzz on, and I just kind of started to notice, hey, as I said, I feel as though I'm not interacting to my fullest potential because I'm using alcohol as a crutch to have fun. And so if you feel like that's the case, it may be a good time to reevaluate why it is that you're drinking. And so one thing too that I've kind of noticed that I want to touch off on to end this video is it's been really nice seeing that the movement, it's called the no to low movement, but a lot of people in the personal development space, like Andrew Huberman, and a lot of like the people there, I know of course like Theo Vaughn talks about this a lot too. He's sober, but Jordan Peterson as well. Like I've heard them all kind of talk. Excuse me, I've heard them all kind of talk about the same sort of points, having to do with like alcohol is poison and it actually really affects your sleep negatively. It affects your inflammation in a poor way. And so there's a lot of reasons not to drink. And so, it's picking up steam that a lot of people are vastly cutting back on their alcohol usage or they're quitting alcohol altogether. And so that, like I've just done it for personal reasons, but to be seeing that has really reaffirmed my thoughts on the whole subject. So that's something that it's been nice to see. So, that's pretty much all I got for today's video. I just kind of wanted to set the tone, and this is one of my first few videos. So I kind of wanted to talk about how I feel about personal topics and, popular topics that are being discussed right now. And I think that's one of them. So I just kind of want to make this video and quickly talk about my thoughts on alcohol, why I don't really drink that much anymore. And, I'll have alcohol occasionally if I feel like I want to, but I just don't really want to right now, and so I haven't. But those are the reasons why. Maybe some people can relate. Hopefully you can learn something from this, or, you have a similar experience, and if you do, I'd love it if you dropped it in the comments. But that's about all I got for today. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you all. So thanks, everybody. Peace.